Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, making a knife from a battleship. No, really. So this weekend, I attended a great knife making event, a contest down at the amazing battleship USS Alabama that I'd like to share with you. Now, along the way, I watched several smiths make knives from actual battleship steel. So today, I'll take you along for that experience. And if you stick around to the end, I'll give you a guided tour of the battleship itself, which is something that should be of interest to anybody who likes steel, history, military history, all that stuff. And this is going to include several surprising secrets about metalwork on battleships. All right, let's go. This weekend, I was, I guess you'd say, the MC of a knife-making contest held in Mobile, Alabama, about a stone's throw from the actual World War II era battleship USS Alabama. More on that later. Now, if you're thinking about getting into knife making, I always encourage you to find knife making events where you can watch experienced knife makers work, maybe pick their brains a little, maybe run into some guys like me that you might have seen on social media, or people like revered Mississippi knife maker Paul Lebitard here, who just came to hang out and talk knife making. I mean, there are all kinds of events, from knife shows to hammer-ins to contests like the one I'll be showing you here, that give you easy access both to popular knife makers and just guys who are getting started with knife making, so that you can ask questions or just pause for a quick selfie. They're just really fun, and you learn a lot. Anyway, at this weekend's event, there were about 10 contestants, at least half of whom had been contestants on Forged in Fire. The event was staged as a fundraiser for Forging a Difference, a nonprofit in Mobile, Alabama that helps teach veterans knife making. I'll let Forging a Difference founder Jerry Gardner tell you a little more about it in a minute, but first, let's watch these guys work. Knife makers in the competition included Forged in Fire champ Brian Easterling, Cade Daniels, whole bunch of guys. Anyway, all the contestants started with raw steel. In the case of Seth here, the starting point was a 2-inch ball bearing, while several others used forge welded steel harvested from an actual battleship. Now, if I understood it correctly, it was actually not from the Alabama, but from its sister ship, I guess you'd call it, the USS Texas, which is a pre-World War I era ship that also happens to be the only surviving dreadnought in the world, as far as I know. Still, a knife from a battleship. How cool is that? The contest was conducted live on the Battleship Park premises so that people who attended could watch everybody work, with the crowd of onlookers never more than 10 or 12 feet away from the contestants. Like I said, great place to learn if you're just getting started in knife making, or even if you're just thinking about it. I met several guys there who were thinking about getting into knife making and really just taking those first few steps. Anyway, this is an annual event, so if you live in the area and you haven't made it there yet, by all means come out next year and support this great effort for veterans. Speaking of which, here's Forging a Difference founder Jerry Gardner to tell you a little about the event.
I'm Jerry with the Blacksmith Experience, and we're here today at the USS Alabama Battleship Park for the 4th annual knife making competition fundraiser for our nonprofit Forging a Difference. About 7 years ago, I had an opportunity to start teaching blacksmithing. Several years later, after doing that, I got a phone call from Michael Bailey, who was an injured Army veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, who also had terminal brain cancer. He was 41 years old, told me he had about less than a year to live, and one of the things he wanted to do before he passed was to make a knife. 9 months later, he passed away, and his widow invited me to his funeral. At the funeral, there were many pictures of him with taking the class, making knives, and she kept telling me over and over again how impactful and meaningful that experience was for him before he passed. So that was really the genesis of starting a nonprofit, Forging a Difference. And I just realized I have to do something. Just as like to say, we use knife making and blacksmithing to serve those who serve. And so it's just been an amazing opportunity to give back. These events are just a great way to get out in front of the public eye and share about what we do and connect with those that that could benefit from our program.
Now 2:48, we have 4 minutes, so please get those raffle tickets in, and we're shooting for 3 o'clock to do the final.
After forging their knives, the contestants ground the blades to shape. And then heat treated them. Like I said, there were several knives here that were made from actual battleship steel. This knife blade is being etched, and it shows up the battleship steel, which is on the outside, and then the inner cutting edge steel, which is made from a harder type of steel that's all been forge welded together to make one homogeneous piece of steel. Really cool little piece of history right there in a knife. It just shows you the kind of things that can be done to incorporate really, really interesting material into any old piece of knife. Just as for instance, Doc incorporated a piece of bridge cable into the bit of the tomahawk that he was making.
Tell me about it.
Everybody who attended got tickets so they could vote for their favorite knife, dropping them in these red buckets for each maker as the contest went on. The votes were tallied up periodically and the results posted on an ever-changing leaderboard to heighten the suspense.
At 2.
In the end, contestant Brian Easterling won the event, but all the knife makers turned out really cool knives. The contest is fun, of course, but the real point here was to raise funds to help folks who've served the country. All right, now at the beginning of this video, I promised you a peek inside the Alabama, so let's head over there right now. The Alabama BB-60 was a World War II era South Dakota class battleship. Now, confusingly, there was a World War I era South Dakota class battleship too. Totally different animals from this one. Anyway, like its brethren, the North Carolina and Iowa class ships of World War II, the Alabama mounted 3 turrets of 16 inches, throwing projectiles of about twice the weight of a Formula One race car. So you didn't want to get hit by one of those things. Additionally, it's got 5 inches, 40 millimeter Bofors, 20 millimeter anti-aircraft weapons. It's just bristling with firepower. Now, the Alabama served in both the Atlantic and Pacific during World War II. You can tour the ship pretty much at will, with tickets priced about what it'd cost you to eat lunch at a fast food restaurant. So if you're interested in things made out of metal, you'll just go nuts on board here. So much to see. Just as an engineering achievement, I can't even scratch the surface in this short little video, but a big part of what makes the ship interesting is that with a wartime crew of 2,700 people, the ship had to be incredibly carefully designed so as to fit the 4 human beings per every foot of ship, giving them room to work, to live, to eat, all that stuff. Just an amazing achievement. Each of the 3 16-inch turrets sits on this massive steel barbette that extends down all the way to the keel. Basically a big tin can, so the projectiles and powder were stored inside this 3 or 4 story deep hole, which rotated along with the entire turret. So each of these turrets weighed like as much as an entire Navy destroyer, and it could turn all that weight peg to peg in about 45 seconds. Again, amazing piece of engineering. It could also put about 2 rounds downrange each minute. Huge amount of destructive power. Of course, honestly, the advent of the aircraft carrier meant that these battleships were pretty much out of date the minute they were built, but still, it doesn't take away from the engineering achievement. The ship displaced 38,000 long tons and had a top speed of about 27 knots. I toured the engine room, which must have been just a terrifying place to work, at least at first, with boilers developing 130,000 horsepower, all this incredible machinery just going full blast. I mean, really amazing. The hull was armored with foot-thick steel. You can check out the evidence of the casting on the side of one of the 18-inch thick turrets. Now, speaking of metal, I promised you a little bit about metalworking on board. The Alabama had a full blacksmith shop. You can see all the gear in there. Forges, anvil, all kinds of stuff. It must have been insanely hot in this windowless space behind a foot of steel in the middle of the Pacific in July. Also a fully equipped machine shop, several lathes, including an enormous lodge in Shipley, a hydraulic shaper, drill presses, mills, all kinds of gear. Check out the store of bolts and this mammoth wrench. Everything's on a big scale. The ship amounted to a floating city. Surgeons, ophthalmologists, nurses, tailors, cobblers. There was even a soda jerk working a full ice cream stand. Here's a space about the size of my living room that birthed 27 sailors at a time. Anyway, I could go on and on, but if you've never seen one of these just absolute beasts, I'd encourage you to do so. There are museum battleships everywhere from, Pearl Harbor in Hawaii to, I think the USS North Carolina is in Goldsboro. I forget, somewhere on the North Carolina coast. So anyway, if you get the chance to see one of these things, do not miss it. I'll wrap it up there, but again, if you get a chance next year, Forging a Difference has been staging this event for, I think, 4 years now, so I'm sure they'll be doing it again next year. So check it out, and you can have a great twofer. You can see this excellent knife-making event and tour this magnificent testimony to the bravery and service of our sailors and the engineering achievement of its builders. Just an amazing thing to see. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and keep on making those knives. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.